Hi, I'm Jody Gorin-Road, your host for Storytellers Behind the Scenes. Thank you so much for continuing to listen to our podcast and for joining me today. I am really excited to introduce you to my friend, Erika Schroeder. Erika is a DP who has been working in this field for a very long time. She started as a PA, worked in many different areas of production, and has become a sought-after director of photography. She works in so many different genres of production, including unscripted, documentary, and also sports. Today, we're going to learn so much from her about balancing life and work, and we'll also hear her perspective of how she was able to make it in a male-dominated profession of being a director of photography. So please welcome Erika Schroeder. Sit back, grab a drink, and hang out with us for a little while. We hope you enjoy our show. Welcome, Erika Schroeder.
Thank you. Hello.
Thanks for carving some time out for us. It's been a while since we've actually seen each other and spoken with each other, but it was always so much fun to go out on shoots with you. And you are our first female DP on the podcast. So,
oh, wow. Yay.
Bravo. I always think that it's important we do a social media post called Female Filmmaker Friday, where we're lifting the voices of female filmmakers. You and I had spoken about that. But I think it's important in the podcast to share stories from not just women or men, but, from everyone, from all walks of life. So I'm just so excited to be able to have you as a woman who's been out in the field in a predominantly male field as far as being a camera operator or director of photography. Yes. There are certainly a lot of women out there.
Yes.
They don't get enough notoriety, do they?
Mm-hmm. I think what did I start? 20 years ago now, somewhere in that number. And I think every shoot I was ever on, I was always I've never worked with a female camera operator. I've never worked with a female DP I didn't take offense to it. I never even actually thought much of it. I just was doing a job that I wanted to do. So when that became more of I was like, wow, this is happening. This is happening a lot. There must not be a lot of us out there for me to be working on so many different kind of jobs and different clients and different projects. And it is always the same story or always the same comment meant in, I think, a positive way, but just to realize that is not a common thing. It's becoming more common, which is lovely to see. Like now, I think more than ever, especially with what's happening with women today, and just giving more people chances and more people opportunity and being aware of it. I think they're definitely coming to the forefront more than they were 20 years ago, which is amazing.
And anybody who works with you they're so lucky to have you because you're so talented. But I want to just rewind a little bit because you went to Rowan University.
Yeah.
That's in New Jersey, right?
Yes. Yep.
Do they have a good production program? I don't know much about Rowan.
So Rowan, originally it was Glassboro State, and then they were given $100 million to start an engineering program. And then they changed their name to Rowan College. And then by the time I graduated, they had become a university. So now they're Rowan University. But they did have a good communications program, which actually pushed me to Rowan because I'm from New Jersey. I didn't want to go to Rowan. I wanted to go travel. I wanted to go away. But when it came down to it, they had a good swim team. I swam in college. And they had a really good communications program, which was what I was interested in. So that kind of pushed me to go, oh, this makes sense. Even though it's close to where I grew up, it made too much sense to not go. So their communication program has actually just grown since then. I know they've gotten new studios. They're up on all the equipment. They do live broadcasting now. Like Amazing. That's what the students are learning. Yeah. So it was a really good program. It actually
great
helped me.
opportunities.
Yes. And it helped me get a job. Like I was able, because they had a lot of adjunct teachers. And from there, I was able to intern. And then from the internship, then, do some PA work and then land a full-time job. From
What
knowing.
got you interested? Like, not everybody knows what they want to do. But it sounds like you had a pretty good idea. You wanted to major in communications. Did you always know you wanted to be a camera person, a DP or a director?
No, I think I was a senior in high school. And our high school they had a media lab. They started a media program. And so I was one of my electives. I took it and we were out doing a project and I was shooting and I came back and we're editing. And then I was talking to a friend of mine who was in that program and he's like, yeah, I want to be a radio DJ. And I was like, wait, what? You could do that for a job? I'm like, wait, I could be like doing TV stuff for a job? He's like, yeah. I'm like, it was like blew my mind. I never even gave it a thought until I took that media class that this was an option. And we would go out on shoots. I'm like, this is so fun. This isn't work. This is like creative. We're making stuff up. We're just doing, and it was a good time. So from there, because I had so much fun in that class, I just decided, all right, I'm going to do TV. Now, what in TV? I didn't know. That took more time, but just to have that direction from a high school class was awesome.
That's
I was very
incredible.
appreciative. Yeah.
Well, and a lot of schools that are not well funded, when you hear that they're dropping certain programs, I'm guessing media is one of those programs that goes by the wayside. Music programs, same thing, which is really unfortunate.
Yes.
Because these are the types of programs that you want to have that are enriching, give our kids opportunities to, expose them to the what ifs. Well, what if I did want to become a TV person or a news anchor or radio DJ? It opens their minds. It expands their thought process. A lot of kids think, well, my mom was a banker or an accountant or whatever, and they feel like they have to follow in their parents' footsteps. This is a good opportunity. Now, when you went to college, you were at Rowan. I didn't realize this, and I guess we never spoke about it. You were an NCAA swimmer. I had no idea. MVP. Okay. Yeah. Mind blown. How did you manage all this stuff? Because obviously in production, even in college, you have to schedule your shoots, schedule when you can get the gear. How did you, balance swimming and school and everything else?
Well, I swam my entire high school career, starting in 7th grade. So swimming was always a part of everything I did. So I always had that okay, at 3:00, I have swim team practice from this to this. And I had to schedule my life around that and homework. So same in college. I actually think it was helpful in that it helped me stay on track. Knowing I had a 6 a.m. swim team practice, then I had X, Y, and Z classes, and then I'd have practice again in the afternoon and just carving out the time to make sure I got things done. And it might have helped too, because teachers were a little bit more lenient if they knew you were a student athlete and then you did perform well in their classes. They'd kind of be like, all right, well, as long as you get it done. But I think it was helpful because it actually made me schedule the time rather than.
That makes sense. But I think too, obviously you were always competitive.
Yeah.
Right. Hardworking. These are all talents, skills, innate abilities that you have that you brought to your college career, your swimming career, and to your professional life.
Yeah.
And so I think, to your point, that definitely set you up for organizing your schedule, because we all know in production, schedules are all over the place. Yeah. And allocating time and finding balance is always one of those challenges. When I speak to a lot of people in production, how do you balance your life? And it's like, oh, I don't really do a good job with that.
depends on the project and it depends on what you're working on, but you balance
it. Depends on the day, right?
Yeah,
also.
Exactly. But I always found, and even in college, like once I got to be able to start taking my major classes, like for TV, radio, TV, film, TV production, it was fun. So it didn't feel hard. You know what I mean? Like that never felt difficult. Now, English, I was like, oh my God, I got to write a paper. That was hard. But like in TV production, we had to write it like a sitcom and, do all that. That was fun. That was fun. So finding that time wasn't as hard because if you're doing what you like, it doesn't feel hard. I mean, there's moments, but it's easier.
Yeah, that's true. But still, I mean, it's allocating that time and making sure you are accomplishing all the goals that you set for yourself is always right. Can be difficult, especially when you're spread thin. Obviously, you had a great support system too. So you were saying when you went to college, right out of college, you started getting freelance work?
So in college, we had some adjunct professors, and one of our full-time professors actually did TV production outside of that. He had like some side jobs he did. He kept in contact with people. So I was able to go on jobs with them. Like, I guess I did well or excelled in a class, or they saw something in me and they're like, hey, this is available. They used to do, the one professor did Odyssey of the Mind, which they go down and kids from all over the world come and they have a competition. And he would record the kids and do little videos. So I was traveling to Florida with them as a PA. I didn't get paid.
Wow.
Sometimes I did. And then
they paid for your trip, right? I mean, there were other things. They fed you, they treated you well. And wow, what an opportunity.
Yes.
Talking about exposure, right?
Right. It was amazing.
The battle.
Right. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is like, you get to travel and do fun things. And we're going to the beach and recording these little fun videos. And I thought it was great. So I was able to stay in touch with these adjunct teachers, the teachers that still worked in the business, go out with them as an intern, then actually go out with them as a PA. And then you start meeting other people that they work with. And from there, I just started getting calls like, hey, you're available to PA here. Can you do this? And then at one point, I had gotten a call. It was after I graduated, but from a contact I had made through those internships and PA jobs to be a coordinator for a big travel gig for a corporation. And that was it. That was wow. Like the
so you were building your resume in college. This is something that I try to push my kids about. It's like, you don't have to wait until you get to a certain stage. Like, you were already building your base.
Yeah. And I didn't even know it. I just thought, oh, there's an opportunity. Let me go do it. And then, and because I work hard and I always want to do the best I can, that shows, I guess. And so then it would, put me to, and how freelance world goes, like you do a good job on that one, it takes you to the next. That's the only way.
And you're so badass, Erika. Come on. Oh, no. You're so good at what you do. And you know what I always enjoyed? When we were on set together, it was light. Even when there was a tough situation that we had to work through, it was like, okay, we'll get through this. It's like, let's keep our head level, like level-headedness is important. And we sort of like, chuckled about a couple things and moved on. Yeah. And there were some shows that were really challenging. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. So what was your actual, as an adult out of college, what was your first job?
So through all those internships and all the little jobs I took, when I was hired as the production coordinator for a company, it was Video Image at the time. They're out of Yardley. They are now Shadowbox Pictures, but I became the production coordinator for this project they had. And that was my first job, like legit. I look at it now that I'm 47, but what was I, 21? I thought nothing of it. I mean, I was nervous, but I just did it. And I just went out and I was coordinating and we were traveling. We would go to different locations, and then on that job, I'd be coordinating out on that job, but then I'd be helping like with PA, like grip stuff, whatever needed to be done. I was just there to do it. And it was awesome. I got to fly in a private jet on that gig. It was just like one of those jobs where the budget was endless and we just got to do everything, rent the high-end cars, go eat at good restaurants.
Endless budgets. Yeah. I never hear that anymore.
No, that doesn't exist anymore. That's out. So that was my introduction. And that company from that gig, they hired me full-time. So Video Image then had a position available, and they had originally hired me as an editor. But because they didn't have a production coordinator, I didn't really edit. I became like a production coordinator and would go out on jobs, and I would grip, I would elect, I would do everything because I wanted to do everything. I wanted to learn the whole business. So I'd coordinate, and then I'd go out, help light stuff. And then I would do all the things. And then when we got back to the office, because they're a small production house, I would edit. I learned how to edit. I learned how to use the machines. Eventually from there, I would sit down with clients and edit with them. But what was happening there is I was finding that I was becoming the production manager, which meant I wasn't going on jobs. I wasn't on set. I wasn't really doing the grip electric thing as much. And it was kind of, I was realizing, I'm like, oh, this isn't really this isn't the path I want. This isn't where I want to be. I like to be in different situations every day. I like my job to feel different every day. So it was just becoming a little bit more monotonous, budgets, numbers, calling people, like the things that I was just like, oh, this is not as creative as being out on set.
You were more administrative at that point, but an integral player in that company, because you can't survive without a great production manager.
Right. Exactly. So it was becoming like either I'm going to move on, and see what else is out there. And my boss at that point was like, listen, you have never shot. You've never been a camera operator. You've never done anything behind the camera. Is that something you want to do? I said, yeah, let's try. And then that was it. I was there for 2 more years. And after about 2 years, I kind of was like, all right, I was kind of itching to see more, do more, make more money. And so I left, and that's when my freelance career started. It's probably like
how valuable though, all of those little experiences, editing, production management, all of these things made you a more well-rounded DP, don't you think?
I think it's so important to know you don't have to be an expert in every part of it, but to understand and have experienced a little bit of what everybody's doing on set on a regular basis is so important, because there's so many times I work with people that have no idea, no clue, like just don't understand. And so they're so quick just to tell people what to do. I'm like, wait, do you even understand what that even entails? And I know that that's their job. They've signed up for that job, but there's a part of like human compassion where there's just like an element of going, this at the end of the day is a job. Not saying it's not important and we're not going to get it done, but let's work together or understand what each part means so we can get it done without killing each other.
We're not saving lives.
No,
you know,
we're making a TV
people
show.
do take it very sometimes over the top,
yes.
Where, they're screaming on set or just losing their mind. And that's really counterproductive to the success of any production. So you left Shadowbox.
Yep.
And you started freelancing. And I think, is that when we started? That's when we met, when I was at Keystone Pictures. And I mean, because you worked on a bunch of shows with us, Married Away,
Trading Spaces, Kids, like all the
Banyan shows.
Yes, all of them. And I think I left at a good time. Like it was the middle of Trading Spaces, like height, like they were kind of like in this, like maybe coming on their downslope of being the most popular show, but it was still a good time to get in. So I always say that Trading Spaces was my big freelance show. That was like my first, like, whoa, freelance can be amazing. Like we would travel for 2 weeks at a time. The crew was so much fun. The show was already like in this momentum of like popularity. So that added to this like excitement level, because it was people I'd watched for, I don't know how many years on TV, and now I'm working with them. So that was awesome. Those shows were that's where I cut my teeth on all those shows.
So after you did all of those shows, because you do sports as well, you've been
Yes.
working with NFL for many years now. How many years now?
So I started with them in 2006 as freelance, but my freelance career with them has been I would say I did not start shooting football for them until the last 2 years, which is crazy. Like when I think about it, I do their documentary stuff. I shoot their interviews. I'll go out and be a second cam. They have studio shows that they do. So I would be in the studio and we would shoot the live studio shows or pre-taped, whatever it was. But my opportunity to shoot football wasn't until the last 2 years. And there was times when they asked if I would want to do Hard Knocks. But at that point in my life, I think like my kids were babies and the idea of going somewhere for 6 weeks and the hours that they were keeping, it just seemed really, I was like, I think I'm working enough at this point in my career that I don't need that. It just didn't feel right. And then this past season, I was asked to do Hard Knocks and it felt exciting. It was just different. The energy was different. I felt different. And it had started.
And sometimes it's just what's going on in your life. You know, your kids are getting a little bit older and they're more self-sufficient. So, you know, when they're little, you want to be around, when you want to be there for their activities at school. Let's talk a little bit about balancing family life and being a very busy DP who travels. How do you do it? Help your kids with the homework, make sure it all gets done. And also, as we had spoken about earlier offline, is just setting a good example for your kids, letting them know that you're doing what you want to do, what you love to do.
It's a good question because I don't really have an answer for that. Other than that, like my partner, he's a teacher. So his schedule really allows me to then be able to travel because I know that he's going to be home at 3:00 or he's going to be able to take them to their practices, or if they're sick, he'll be able to stay home because as a freelancer, you can't call out sick. I mean, if you're really sick, but like my daughter's home from school, but I can't call out. I'll never get a call again from that client. That's the possibility. So I think having a partner that has a set schedule and that's very open. In the beginning, it was hard, but he was very accepting of what I was doing and okay with it. And then like my kids didn't realize what I was doing. Not until recently. Like my son, who's 15 now, when I told him what I was doing, I showed him pictures. He's like, "Oh my God, that is dope, Mom." And I was like, "You never said that to me before in my life. Like I've been doing this your whole life, but you're just now connecting the dots as to what it means." So that's pretty cool. So balance is hard though. My daughter doesn't love it. My son thinks it's cool. He's like, "You got to go make the money, Mom. You got to go do your thing." But she gets a little bit, heart sick. I think she knows what it means.
She misses her mom.
Yeah.
It's understandable.
Yeah.
Now, when you're doing this work for NFL and other companies as a female DP, did you come up against hurdles? And you and I did talk a little bit about this, but I'd like you to share some of I wouldn't call them struggles, right? But they are challenges and hurdles to overcome. When you're out in the field, is she going to have the stamina to shoot, 16 hours with the camera on her shoulder? Were you questioned about your ability or judged more harshly?
I think yes. So definitely yes. But sometimes I'm not super aware, or that's it's hard to put into words like aware. I just go and do my job. I'm there to do a job and I'm there to do the best job I can do. So, and being so used to being sometimes the only female on set with including everybody that's there, besides talent, probably. Maybe there's one or two talent that are female, but normally, possibly besides the producer, the only female. I couldn't think about it. It wasn't something that I could make a thing like I just did. But it definitely, there is times when I've been on set and I'm the only camera, the female camera. And then there's like 2 other DPs or 2 other camera operators that are guys. And the director singles me out constantly. And like the other 2 guys that I'll go talk later about it, I'm like, okay, am I crazy? Is something happening? They're like, no, dude, he's just found his person and now you're the one. And I can't say for sure if it's because I'm female. That's my hunch. That's a lot of the time that there's this like, oh, she's not good enough or strong enough. And then there was a time in my career when I was pregnant with my daughter and I was taking off jobs. They didn't let me work. Not because I told them I couldn't or that they even asked. They didn't ask. They just decided she's 8 months pregnant. We're not comfortable. And my pregnancies weren't hard. My pregnancies weren't illnesses. I was capable. And
they also didn't even give you an opportunity by saying, you know, how do you feel about this? Do you or care enough after working with you, just say, you know what, she can still work. We'll lighten her load a little bit. Just maybe have her shoot 6 hours. Right.
Just a conversation. It was just like, I'm working. And then I wasn't. And I had my daughter in 2009 and 2008 was when the economy was like crashing. So like Horrible. Now I have no income, or like you've taken the bread and butter off of my table without even having a conversation. And that was hard. That was really hard because I was fully capable of doing my job. I was still working out. Like, and you go to any doctor, they'll tell you if you feel fine and this is something you've done your whole entire life or for long enough, it's not new while you're being pregnant. Yeah, go for it. You can work all the way up to the day you have the kid. But that was not presented to me. That was taken away from me.
And you were also physically capable. You had been an athlete your whole life. So they didn't even take into consideration what your real abilities were. It was just like they looked at you, you had a bump in your belly, and they said, you know what, we're not comfortable. That's not fair. That's not fair. So did you go back to work for those folks after you had your daughter, or did you move on and you were doing other work?
I did. So, well, things were really slow after I had her. 2009 was rough. That was a rough year, I think, across the board for a lot of production people.
There was that recession really, production took a hit.
Yeah, it really did.
We all know that firsthand.
Yeah. So that was rough, but yes, eventually I did. But in the, like before I had her, after I found out what actually had happened, I called. I had conversations. I said,
Good for you.
I mean, it was the first time in my career I was really like, whoa, we've crossed a line. You've completely crossed the line, and that's not okay. And because prior to that, like at the side comments or like the female comments or just like, you know, I just let it go. I'm just on set and it's what it is.
Well, and you have to stay focused on your job at hand, right? You have to be in the zone as a DP, right? You're following the story. You're listening to audio. You can't be worried about somebody else's opinion of you being a female or being pregnant. That's just obnoxious.
No, that was that moment in my career was hard. That was really hard. And it was the first time I actually said something and made it. For you. Yeah. So
you didn't let it stew and you didn't let it fester for a long period of time. You called them out on it.
Yeah, right away.
Which a lot of people are worried to do that because people are afraid they're never going to get hired again. That's what the freelance fear is, right?
Yeah.
You turn a job down or you call out sick or you never see it again. You know, you never hear from them.
Yeah. Right. And that's as much as freelancing is wonderful because there's a level of freedom. You're always on edge. You're always anxious. You're always, I mean, because even if you have clients that you've built an amazing relationship with them, there's no guarantee, you know, like,
right. If they start losing work, it's the trickle down theory, right? Like Banyan's a good example.
Yeah.
Right? We were all gainfully employed, worked a million hours, a lot of shows, and then they started losing shows, and a whole group of freelancers in Philadelphia
Was it?
Lost a lot of work.
Yeah.
So I
That's
understand
the roller coaster.
Now, you did take a full-time job, right, with the PBS station in Philly. Was that one of the reasons why?
So that was in 2018. I took a full-time job with them. Yeah, I think I was just having a moment in my career. I was like, I'm getting older. Starting to look at like what retirement looks like. Like I'm getting like we've arrived. I've arrived. I'm like, oh my God, I'm here. And that could be in 20 years, but still it's like something that's in the back of my head. So when that opportunity became available or presented itself, I said, let me try. Because a lot of those people that work at WHYY have been there for years. So in my head, I was like, oh, well, it must be a good company, or there must be something to it. These guys stay and they retire there and they must get paid well. So I took the opportunity and I was there for about a year, but it was enough to realize that I do really like freelance. There's like a level of my clients that I have, like I was like, wow, I put so much work into building a client relationship with these other people. Now taking a full-time job that maybe I don't necessarily love, I'm losing all that. And that hurt. That I felt that.
You also lose flexibility in your schedule, right? Because even though there are those weeks where you're booked back to back, 12 days in a row, long days, long hours, you're exhausted. When you do have a little bit of downtime, you have flexibility. And also as a freelancer, it allows you to pick and choose your work. If you're lucky enough to be busy and say, yes, I don't love working for that client, I'm going to pass on this job.
Yeah.
You know, or they're not paying me enough money and I don't feel desperate because I do have a base of clients. Mm-hmm. That happens to me plenty.
Yes.
You know, people offer you a rate to work 12 hours for a rate that you worked for over a decade or more ago.
Right. It's like when
thank you so much. Can I refer you to another, producer? But it is still that constant fear in the back of your head is like, when is that next job happening?
Yes.
But at least you were also working for NFL throughout all that. So you did still have that connection and that work. Talk about some of the other jobs, because you've traveled literally all over the world. And I know we were working, I was working for Keystone at the time. So we did that show Married Away, which was wild. I mean, you went to some incredible places and you literally have been all over the world.
Yeah, so we did.
Where was your favorite place?
Oh, that's a good question. Well, we did Married Away. We went to Anguilla. That was an amazing island. I would have never gone there if it wasn't for the show. I would have never heard about the island if it wasn't for the show, I don't think. Married Away was a good one because we went international. So our trip to Ireland, there was a wedding in a castle. That was amazing. And then just recently, this past year, I went to Mexico City. So we did the Mexico City game for in season for Hard Knocks. And that was cool. Because I don't know that I'm going to Mexico City on my own. Like I've heard that it's like a new vacation spot and people are going, the food's great. But like to actually go and somebody's paying you to go and they're paying for you to go. That was amazing. That was awesome. That was amazing. Mexico a bunch. I can't even think of where we were in Mexico. One of the shows when we did House Hunters International, we went to a town in Mexico that was just a working middle-class town that these expats ended up living in. And so we got to see like what it would be like to live in Mexico, not in one of these like resorts or what it is in like one of these touristy places, but like in a little town in Mexico. It was, I can't even think of the name of it because it was so long ago, but it was awesome. So like, I don't have a favorite, but I do enjoy the opportunities to travel because of work.
Yeah. And you've been traveling a lot. I mean, this year you went to the Super Bowl. How lucky.
It was fun.
Especially because Philly was in the Super Bowl. So that was even better, right?
There's a lot of disappointed people.
Of course. But they did have an incredible season, right?
Yes, they did. It was a good game too.
Yeah, it really was. So with all of these experiences that you have, was there ever a time where you were out in the field where you were concerned for your safety in all these international travels?
Nothing that sticks out. There was nothing that was like, oh my gosh, I'm in a terrible place because of my job. I think too, like I've chosen jobs that you get a call, and for whatever reason, sometimes you just get a gut feeling. You're like, I really don't think I should say yes to this job. I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's how it's being presented, who's presenting it. I don't know what it is. Because there's plenty
of instincts. It's your instincts.
Yeah, because there's been plenty of those jobs that I ended up taking. I'm like, you know what? I'll just do it. And then when I do the job, I'm like, what am I doing here? How did I get here? This is not what I signed up for. This is not so I started saying no. Like if my gut's like, I think this is not a good idea. So I think I put myself in a position in that way where I didn't take jobs if they felt off or in a dangerous spot. Like I know a lot of people have done like the cops shows or like where they ride in a car. Like I just like, yeah, I don't need that. Like I'm okay. Like I feel like then you're really setting yourself up.
I think that's an important point to make because, this podcast, we have people listening who are from all walks of life, but a lot of college kids, people changing fields, what have you. It's good for them to understand that you do have to draw a line in the sand, you have to listen to yourself and your instincts. If you're not feeling comfortable or you're uneasy, even once you get to set, there is no rule that says you can't tell the person who hired you something came up, whatever. Sometimes you have to make something up. But if you're feeling uncomfortable, get out of the situation in a mature way. Don't just not show up the next day for work.
No,
and
right.
Not call. Right.
No, that's the worst.
Not that you would ever do that.
No,
always take the high road. I didn't even know that you had done a stint on Restaurant Impossible because I worked on that show for 4.5 years.
I know. I feel like
pieced out, but I didn't. I was not in the field with you. I know that.
Yeah, it was like I did there was like a few weeks or whatever. We went to San Pedro's Island. Is that what it was in Texas? We did a few of them. They were fun. There were a lot of
that show's still on the air. Yeah, I mean, let's talk about that. Talk about long hours. But how much fun is it? When you finish, there's this level of satisfaction, especially after the reveal and it's all over, where the family's happy. The crew is happy. And, every night we would go out and party and enjoy each other's company as well. Fun. I mean, it was a fun show to work on. Could be grueling.
Yeah, but I feel like that's production. If you're signing up for production, especially in a sense of a reality-based,
right. Unscripted. Yes.
Yeah, like you have to understand what you're signing up for. And I think sometimes people don't realize, but you just go with it. Like, I signed up, here I am. I've done this before. It's going to be a long day, but they also had it down pat too, where they had one extra camera person. So you always were rotating in and out. You weren't holding the camera for 10 hours at a time. Like you did get some breaks. And
we had an overnight crew that would work with Tom and the designers at night so that the crew during the day wasn't, going 24 hours.
Right. But the designers and the contractors were.
They
probably worked harder. But yeah, there's just fun, just like trading spaces. There was just it's like a second family. Like all those people that you end up working with, they had just become your second family. Just like this year doing Hard Knocks for the first time, there becomes a connection between these people. You're with them say you're there for 3 weeks or 6 weeks, and they're your family for this short amount of time. And then you all disperse into the world and you all are doing your own thing. But every time you come back together, there's that thing.
Well, you've made this deep connection with these people because you're with them many hours every single day for weeks on end. You have a shared experience, right? So there's a connection that happens and a bond where you have each other's back too. I mean, obviously there are some people that you may not get along with as well, or they don't go out and party with you or whatever. But even those people, there is just this, it's like this unspoken family connection that you make.
Mhm.
And, you know, some people say, oh, you know, I spoke to a director the other day, and he was saying, you know, my work wife, because, you
Yeah.
know, he worked on the show Chopped, or whatever show he's been working on for, you know, years and years and years. And, you know, they're making decisions together, fixing problems, putting fires, quote unquote, putting fires out.
Yeah.
And you just learn how to kind of do a dance together, you know, and you're in sync, you know,
Right.
you end up talking about everything, at least, you know, in the relationships that I made. It wasn't just, we didn't just talk about work, you know, it was like life.
Oh,
How are we
yeah.
going through
Everybody
this
knows
life together?
you have kids, you don't have kids. Oh, you're married. Like all the things, like because you're just with them so forever for, you know.
Did you have a favorite show that you worked on, or you just are so happy about all of the different projects? Because you've done a lot of work, I mean, and worked on not all food, not all sports, not all home and, you know, HGTV rebuild kind of things.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
I think it has to be Trading Spaces, just because it was my like initiation show, I guess. It was like my start. And I was young, and I felt like the group was at like all similar ages. And we just had fun. Like it was just fun. Like everybody knew it was almost like everybody realized what we had and took full advantage of that time to be able
yeah,
to like travel for 2 weeks at a time with the same crew. Everybody got along. And everybody would go out and do their things. And then you'd have some downtime and people would go on adventures it just was
yeah.
this like.
And the talent was amazing on that show.
Yes.
And the other thing that was nice about it is there were so many different on-camera talent that you had variety.
Yeah.
With the contractors, with the designers, you know, Paige was always there, and she's delightful, right? But even though it was the same work, it was never the same, right? Isn't that one of the things, the spontaneity and sort of that getting up every day, and it's like it's a fresh day and something new is going to happen today, even though you're working on the same show day in and day out. It's never the same.
No, it's never the same. So they're like in that, what you just said, that's the fun part, right? Like every day is different, but at the same time, it's also terrifying. There is a element of like it's almost like you're like, especially if it's a new client, new gig, it's starting a new job every time. The butterflies, going to work on, I don't know what I'm walking into. Like as much information you get, it's never going to be what happens. Like you can plan your day out to the T, but because you're in the field, or you're not able to control the environment you're in most of the time. So it's always, oh my God, what's going to happen today? Especially if it's a new client. Like if it's somebody I've worked with a number of times and I'm like familiar, it's less, but there's still that like.
Yeah, but it keeps you on your toes, I think. Yes. And also, for me, and that is a really great point, but when you're working with a new client or you're working on a new project, even if it's a client that you've worked with a long time, it's a new project with other people, there's this level of comfort, yet you can't just sit back and just let it flow. Like you still need to be in the game, in that zone, and very highly focused. Now, there are people that we've worked with on some of these shows that, they're formulaic, right? These shows. And you don't want to get into like a lethargic, or you don't want to be like mailing it in like, oh, you're never going to use that shot. I mean, I've worked with DPs who have literally told me I'm not going to shoot that. Even though I've asked them, I said, we need that shot. You're never going to use that shot. How do you know I'm not going to use the shot? You're not in the edit room. And if I don't shoot it and I don't have it, then obviously I can't use it.
Yeah, definitely.
But at least I can give it to the editor if we do shoot it as a possible option. Yeah. I've had many conversations. And early enough in my career, I decided that I would never call people out on set because it just it's a distraction.
Yeah.
You want people to stay in the zone. Now, obviously, if something horrible is going on, you got to pull somebody aside. We've had those situations. But in general, it's always good to like just keep everybody's mind focused on the job at hand and then pull them aside afterwards and say, are you having a problem? Are you having a bad day? How can I help? Because it does get tiring. You know, you're on the road long enough. We still have a life. We still have a family at home. We're worried about, you know, challenges at home, obviously. So, you know, I think it's important for everybody to understand that too. You got to give yourself a little bit of a break too.
Yeah. I mean, like,
you can't always have a good day.
Can't always have a good day, but to be in a situation like we are, like I said, like as much as being on the road with the same group of people can be amazing, it can also be a nightmare if it's the wrong group of people. Like if you have somebody that's just a constant negative, like you said, like, hey, can we go shoot that? You don't need that. And you're like, wait, what? What's happening? Right? Like we're here for a job and we're here to make the best product, whatever it is we can. And if somebody is just constantly up against you, it's not helpful. I mean, I've worked with guys like I'm with them together and it's just constantly, we're just not on the same page. And I'm like, what are we doing here? Like,
and some people can be condescending, but I will say that there have been a number of freelancers that I stopped hiring.
Yeah.
Because they would take that chip on their shoulder along with them to every job. And I would have clients call me and complain about the same person over and over and over. And they could be the most talented DP or audio engineer or anything. But if you are pissing your client off
all the
every time they're working with that person, then not just your job is in jeopardy, but everybody on the crew, because if that whole project goes away,
right,
you know, you're not kind of spreading the love, right? I mean, the whole idea of working on a big show is employing other people and having this great group assembled to work together and make beautiful images and tell great stories. But there have been, I won't say a ton, but there have been a handful of DPs and an audio person that a couple of audio guys I stopped working with because their work became inferior because they were unhappy all the time.
Yeah, they stopped doing extra or whatever it took to get the job done.
Right. And as a producer or director in the field, I don't want to be second guessed all the time. It sucks your energy, you know, it kind of sucks the life out of you and changes the dynamic and the mood in the room or in the field or what have you. So I think, you know, these are all good points, you know, to make, because it happens on a lot of shoots. I won't say every shoot, but
no, right. But it's a shame because a lot of times some of these people are super talented, but because of what they bring to the table outside of just their talent, it's just, you can't work with it. And it's a shame, actually. So I guess too, like I go on a job and I just know that taking care of the situation positively, or stepping back and reevaluating without getting angry, or if I disagree with the director, making sure I'm doing it in a way that I'm like, hey, look, I was thinking about X, Y, and Z. What do you think? Maybe we can talk about it, or maybe I don't, you know, there's just a way to do it without pissing people off.
Well, and in that scenario, I will say, you know, if you came to me, and I'm sure we've had these conversations, but if you said, I think we should shoot it from this direction or with that background or what have you, even if I have a different plan or a thought process that maybe differs from yours, I'll say, let's shoot it both ways.
Right.
I'm a storyteller, but you're seeing the world through a different lens than I am. And so, you know, that affords you other opportunities for telling a story. You see things in a different way. And I think the sharing of that time together is so important. And that's why production is a team. It's a team sport, right? I mean, one-man bands are the worst, are they not?
Oh, I say no. I feel like I've done enough one-man bands, but there's some, like that, like gut feeling. I've done one-man bands before, and I'm like, wait, this seems like a lot for one person, and I've taken the job anyway. And those are the jobs, the few I've had, that something goes wrong. It's been
Turn
like
out to be a nightmare.
Right. And I'm like, oh my God, this would have never happened if I maybe had like a PA or an audio person.
Yeah. And so for people who don't know that term, one-man band, it's a one-woman band. Well, it's just one operator who has to light, handle audio, sometimes has to direct, shoot, manage talent, maybe sometimes get releases. It's just way too much to ask of one person. And
they want to pay you less most of the time.
Listen, as a field producer director, I have been asked to shoot and do the job. And early on, when that first started happening, and they refer to people as predators or what have you, and there's more people that are doing it, but the production has changed a lot.
Yes.
I had already been, producing for 20 years. So I thought, okay, now they want me to shoot and do audio. And how do I know that the camera hasn't drifted while I'm sitting in the chair asking a question?
Right.
How do I maintain eye contact with my guest and ask pertinent follow-up questions, this isn't on necessarily reality or unscripted, but it's, the backstories for going on, these talk shows. Right.
Sure. Yeah.
And so there was this big push for this one person crew thing, which I too stopped. I actually said yes one time. And of course, I'm married to a DP.
Yeah.
Right? And Daryl's like, okay, I'll help you. We'll figure it out. And the more I got into it, I thought, I'm just setting myself up for failure.
Yes, that's what it feels
I don't want to do this.
Right.
And so rather than be nervous, not sleep that night, maybe screw something up really badly and never get hired again, I called the client back. And I said, I love working with you. You're one of my favorite clients to work with. And I understand you're trying to keep your costs in check and reduce, costs. But I've been doing this a long time, and I just have been thinking about it, and I'm not comfortable taking on the role of a DP, trying to direct and handle audio and lighting and all of these other things. And so they said, is your husband available to go with you?
That's amazing.
And he was, luckily, because, he was at that time, he was really busy. And so we went out together, but it's just a lot to ask. It's almost insulting.
Yeah.
I feel it's like, wait, we're going to make you be like a Sherpa, because it's not just the shooting part and the technical side. You have to get all your gear prepped, make sure it's all working, load it, unload it, set it up. And then people are staring at you, waiting for you to be ready.
Right.
Like, okay, it's been an hour. Are you ready? Well, I'm doing everything myself.
But they don't see it that way. They have no idea. But it's like, so I like you, I stopped because the one or two that I did do that went bad, I was like, I cannot set myself up for this. This is not this is not for me. This is not my thing.
And I really drew the line when clients wanted me to send crews out as a one-man band in New York City. I refused.
No. Yeah.
I said, there is just no possible way, or any other major, metropolitan city. It's too difficult. You have to drive. You can't park easily. New York is a nightmare.
Nightmare.
And I think it's all in the approach when you speak to a client. And a lot of times we would send an intern, which is great experience for the intern as well. Yeah. But you don't want to leave a person in the field on their own, especially in this day and age. There's just too many variables and too many
people see cameras and it's just like a thing. It's just
I mean, we've had a crew where there were 10 people and there was a ring of camera thieves, and it must have been an inside job, and one person distracted the DP and the other group was doing their own thing, and they stole the cameras right out of the car, like right in front of a hotel with all these people standing there. And that was 15 years ago. Things are not getting better.
No.
You have to be even more careful. Yes. So yeah, these are all little like tips that we can give people is, don't put yourself in a situation where you feel uncomfortable, unsafe, or concerned that you're not going to be able to live up to the agreement, right? Because if you say, sure, I'll take that job, and you screw it up, you can be sure you're never getting a call back from that person. And also in our industry, as vast as it is, and as many of us as there are, it's very incestuous, this business.
Yes.
If you've worked with me and I move to another job, I'm going to hire you. If we have that type of relationship, and word spreads fast. If you're late on set, if you roll your eyes when you're asked to do something, or you're not stepping up. Yeah.
You're not going to get hired. No. Everybody will know. Oh, I don't work with that person. They just, X, Y, and Z. Oh, okay.
Exactly. So where are your plans, moving forward? I mean, you talked about retirement, which I can't believe I even heard come out of your mouth.
Because that was when I took a full-time job. I was like, what do I do? Because that's become I got to start putting money away. I have to start doing things. So that was only
when you have kids too, you start thinking a little bit differently, right?
Yes, 100%.
But you're not ready to retire, right?
No, but what we were, just to reiterate something we were talking about earlier about taking a job that maybe you don't feel comfortable with, but in that same breath, you have to go outside of your comfort zone. The only way you're getting better or doing bigger things is to maybe take that job that is like, it's a little above where I've been, but if I don't take it, like shooting football, I was like, all of a sudden I'm shooting on the sideline, shooting football. And I knew I hadn't done it, but I was like, if I don't do this, I know I'm capable. If I don't do this, what's next?
Well, you have to stretch yourself. That is a really good point, because you don't grow. I mean, I remember even early on in some of my early jobs, where I applied to be an editor. Are you an editor? Sure, I'm an editor. Mm-hmm. Now, I may not have had a ton of edit experience, but I had enough that I was able to put myself in a good position. And usually when they bring you in, they do a little bit of training. Yeah. So you do have to be a quick study, and you have to work on your own. And now you can learn so much on YouTube. You pull up a video and just like, how does this camera work? Okay. You put it in. Like you get the answer. Hey, Google, right?
Hey, Google. Every job I go on, it's usually another camera. We finally have come to a point where, because I don't own my own gear, because at the time when I thought about it, the cameras were changing, I felt weekly. There was always something new coming out. I mean, even now there's still new stuff coming out, but I feel like we've landed on like 5 cameras that are now like go-tos, right. Which is nice. But at that point, I was like going on a job and working with a new camera all the time. I remember being on airplanes and like reading the manual because I'm like, all right, I got to figure this one out. And they're all basically the same, but the menus are different, or how maybe it functions. So that was always a challenge getting that.
Especially when it moved from tape to digital.
Yes.
That was challenging.
Right. Well, I started
everything was different.
It was film to tape to digital, like to mini DVs and CD. It was just this discs. And then it was just a constant, like trying to figure it out. And now we've landed back in digital, and now we're back into the prime world, into lenses are everything. Whereas like there was a moment in our digital world where if you had a set of lenses, you were getting rid of them. And now you can't, like they're super expensive and hard to find, like especially some of the older ones. So it's pretty amazing, the whole cycle of where we've started and now where we like finally landed. But
and also even in the digital world, there's the different, formats and settings, whether you're shooting 24p or, you want to look at, have more cinematic look. Well, why don't you just shoot on film? Well, there are a lot of students and people who were never trained to shoot film. You have, that great experience. Now, obviously, if you had a film camera in your hand, it would take you a little while to
be a minute.
brush up on it, right?
Yes.
Did you enjoy shooting on film?
I did. I had, it was a short-lived, because it was changed so quickly, but it was a different challenge. But it was also what I knew. Like when I was in college, that's what we shot on. We shot on film. So I had like on the Steinbeck, like cutting the film, taping it together, all the, like our student project. That's what we shot on. We shot on 16. And then when I was at Shadowbox, a lot of our big projects were shot on 35. At that point, I wasn't shooting. But all our commercial stuff we did on 35. We had and everything outside of that was on 16 millimeters. So that was just it was just different. And it was sorry, go ahead. What were you going to say? No, it was the not knowing, like you go shoot it and then you have to wait till it to get developed and then you get it back and then you get to watch it, the dailies, and then you got to go get it color corrected and you're not doing it in your place. You got to go somewhere to do it. So it was just the process was so different. It was really, and slower. It was slower.
Yeah. Well, and let's talk about, when we're talking about evolving in production, everything is different. Cameras are, you can go, obviously there's bigger cameras, but even the bigger cameras are smaller than those old beasts you guys used to hump around, right?
Yeah.
Audio is different. I mean, everything, the lights, these LED lights are so much nicer to use because they don't get so hot. I mean, how many times have you burnt your hand on, trying to turn a light off or take it apart too soon after, so much has changed. Has that made your life easier?
I think yes, but I think it's changed the world of production to quicker. And now, like our time has been cut in half, I feel like, just because of the tools we have, because it is quicker. Maybe that's why budgets have changed and they feel like they can get more in a day because we're more mobile. It's less like you don't have to wait an hour for a light to cool down. You just set up, go and move on.
Right.
I don't love that part. For me, I don't love that part because it can be a grind. It doesn't change that the cameras are heavy or the light. You still have to unpack, pack, do all the things. Sure. But yeah, I guess it's made it easier. It's definitely made it safer as far as it's hard to screw up. Like the latitudes on these cameras, like you have 14, like if you shoot log, you can fix almost anything in post now, like literally almost anything.
When you say log, you're talking about S-Log.
S-Log, yeah. So
it doesn't have, it's not saturated in color. It's just sort of,
just flat. And then you have the capability to go in and just do your thing with like all these different,
I will never forget the first time I was shooting with somebody and I'm like, wait a second, what's wrong with your camera? Why isn't there? Because they didn't say to me, oh, I'm going to shoot
in log,
S-Log. I'm like, once they said, I'm like, okay, that makes sense now. But this was like really early on when people were experimenting with it. But you're right. I mean, and it also makes it, I think, easier for a colorist who's going to take your work and match all the frames and make it so it looks as beautiful as it possibly can. Yes. One of the things I was talking to somebody about, AI and, all these, different things that are sort of evolving in the production world. There's more storytellers, content creators using phones, using little cameras, using the camera on their laptop. How do you see all of these changes affecting the way you do your job and just moving forward in your career? The kids coming out of school have a totally different perspective than we did.
I'm jealous of the kids coming out of school. Actually, I feel like they're so, some of these kids from the time they were 7, they've been on YouTube, they've been making videos. If I was that age, like 10 years old and having access to be able to create like a little video or a movie, and then at that age too, they're so impressionable and they're so eager to learn and like figure things out. They're really like, I'm sure they know more than some of these kids that come out. I'm like, they know way more than I do because they were immersed in that digital world. And they know the capabilities of like, I shot this on my iPhone and then I brought it into my computer and I downloaded this app and I figured out how to edit. Like yeah, I just feel like sometimes I'm behind the eight ball because they've been so immersed for so long. Whereas when I got out, I had to take special classes and I had to make sure I went to college and I had to put myself in positions where like I was at a production company and trying to absorb everything I could. So I feel like it's getting more competitive, the TV world. And that's why one-man bands are way more possible because things have gotten smaller. People are already doing that. Vloggers and these YouTube guys and like that's already happening. So the future, like I'm just very thankful that I'm able to continue on a professional level and keep up at this point because it's ever changing always. It's like it blows my mind. And like I'll go out on a job and we'll start talking about things. I'm like, wait, what's that? What are you guys talking about? And then I'll look it up and I'm like trying to figure it out. And so yeah, it's amazing. It's awesome. It just takes a lot to keep up. And it's okay if you don't know everything. That's the beauty of it. You go out on a job and you learn something new all the time.
And that's part of the great thing of working in a team situation. You are learning from each other and growing together, which on a series is a beautiful thing because you're all evolving together and you've done it a certain way for a while. And together you're going to come up with a new way to tell the story with different types of camera angles or formats and things like that, where it doesn't get stale. I think that's, remaining relevant is important. But I think in my mind, the way to do that is to continue to grow. If you were going to give, some students advice or someone who wants to change their career, what would you say is most important and that has accelerated your career?
Or even just what I've learned, maybe I didn't do in the beginning, but I would say first, ask all the questions all the time. I know that in my career, there's definitely moments I should have asked more, but because I was on set and I was the girl, I didn't want to look like I didn't know, or I didn't know, or I was less than, or I wasn't as equal. So that's something I think about. I'm like, who cares? How are you going to get better? How are you going to learn? But I think that's changed. Like, make sure you put yourself in every position you can. Like, even if you feel like, oh, I want to be the shooter, but they're asking me to be the AC. Be the AC. That's how you're going to learn the camera. That's how you're going to meet the DP that might hire you as an AC. Then that leads to being a DP.
Right. That's a great job, an AC, an assistant camera.
Right. If you want it, like I had worked with an AC. She was amazing. It was a job for the NBA. It was actually for, it was an NBA job, but it was for Clutch. It was for, anyway, but she was my AC. And it was the first time I had an AC that was like, I'd have the camera, I'm doing my thing. And then I'd go to put it, or like I keep carrying it and she just comes over, takes the camera from me, puts it down. Like she's like, Erika, stop picking up the camera. I'm like, I'm sorry. Like, I'm not used to this level of, like, depending on the job you do. So AC is a great.
But that's a very good AC. And that is what their job is.
Yes.
They're supposed to lighten your load. They're supposed to take the cards out of the camera and label them and interact with the DIT and, make sure, the batteries are available and that you don't, there needs to be that seamlessness, right?
Yeah. So that would definitely be like, take your opportunities, take them and run with them. You're going to be scared always, but I think fear, actually helps you move forward. There's that nervousness that helps. What else? Like, I had something I was going to say. Well, don't let fear stop you, because I know there's plenty of jobs that have come up and I questioned if I should take it or if I'm good enough, can I do that? And I take it and everything's great. Works out great. And then I get hired again. and I get hired again. So there's definitely a let that imposter syndrome go, like we were talking,
Right.
let that go and move forward.
Like you said, when people, when you were pregnant or people were questioning because you were a DP, you were determined to prove them wrong, obviously.
Always. I always showed up and probably worked harder because of it. And maybe it was subconscious. I don't know, but definitely come to the table and make sure you know your stuff and make sure you're working harder than the rest of them. Don't let that, don't let the crack show, or maybe you're feeling away, or you got to maybe just step away for a minute, but you have to show up, and even if you're questioning yourself, pretend until or that kind of whole just
don't let them see you sweat, right?
Don't let them see you sweat. Don't ask the questions when they need to be asked, but don't just go. You're just as capable. You're definitely as capable, and then your hard work will show it, and then it'll keep showing. So I think that's I don't know, it's hard because when I first started the business, I didn't question it. I didn't think of it. I didn't think I was different, if that makes any sense. It wasn't something that was in my head that I was different than anybody else that was on that job. I was completely capable. And I would look at half the guys and be like, I'm way better than that guy. How did he get that job? I know I'm better. So
I love that. But that's powerful. That's powerful to be able to say, I'm not going to listen to the noise outside of my head.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to tell myself stories that are not true about my abilities, right? Mm-hmm. That's a hard lesson to learn.
It's difficult. It still is difficult. You still have to, every day, every job, there's a little voice that's like, maybe you're not. And I'm like, no. I'm here and I have every right to be here. Let's go. And the more I work, the more women I meet that are amazing. So it's empowering. It's an empowering, and it's fun. Our job's fun. I don't have to go to a cubicle every day and do 8 million Zoom calls. When I do have a Zoom call, it's about a project or a production that I'm excited about working on. So it's exciting. It's fun. Just got to go.
Well, I am so happy that you became a DP and that, I had an opportunity to work with you, because we really did have fun. Thank you, really, Erika. Thank you for spending some time this afternoon, sharing your stories, and we really appreciate your time today. Thank you. Thank you.
Totally fun.
Subscribe to our podcast to hear more.